Welcome everybody to another episode of the Haunted Vermont podcast. My name is Paul Doski, and joining us is a very cool guest who has been doing a lot of digital creating and stuff for I don't know how long now. But anyway, he can fill us all in about this. But anyway, it's going to sound really weird like when you hear what this man does, or obviously because you clicked on the episode, you sort of already know what to expect. Anyway, let's get the man on board, Brad Martin. So
yes, Paul, Brad, thank you so much for having me on the show.
You're very welcome, man. I've been following you for a while now, and I think what really caught my attention is the video that we were gonna sort of go through and why I contacted you. But anyway, for people that may not know why exactly you're here or what maybe GMMD is, can you give everybody an idea of like what you do and everything else?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Brad. I live in Vermont, in southern Vermont, Bennington County. And I guess it was 2014, in my early 30s, I started getting very interested in metal detecting. And I just so happened to live in a very old home, and it became very easy for me to get extremely addicted to the hobby of metal detecting, finding these old things just in my backyard. And over the last 10 years or so, I turned that kind of love of the hobby of metal detecting into somewhat of a content creator career. I do this mostly full time now, going out and metal detecting and making videos for all of the social media platforms. And it's usually just me and a metal detector and an old abandoned cellar hole way up in the mountains of Vermont, and seeing what treasures I can find. And, truth be told, we don't find a whole lot of treasures, but what we do find is a lot of really interesting historical artifacts by the Vermonters that lived here in the 1800s and sometimes the 1700s. But yeah, so the reason that you initially contacted me, the video that I made, is sometimes, being a southern Vermonter, a lot of the land around us is national forest, which is illegal to metal detect, but there's so much great history in those national forests. My buddy Eddie and I decided to make a video at a very, very interesting place in national forest without metal detectors. So the content of this particular video was just exploring and talking about the history of one of the two Glossenbury ghost towns, which was South Glossenbury.
Yeah. And it's a very pretty area. It's it's pretty and then it's creepy at the same time. I think that would be like the perfect way. And I guess what I'm trying to get here is so the other reason is it's also known as the Bennington Triangle, which has been around for a long time. For those that may not know, Joseph Citro actually kind of gave it that nickname way back in 97, I think it was, or 94, from the Vermont Public Radio that he had one time. And then from there, it kind of just, stayed there because of all the weird disappearances and stuff that have gone in with the triangle, which was like Somerset, Glastonbury, and Shaftesbury.
Yeah, the size of the triangle kind of varies depending on what book you're reading or who you're talking to. But Glastonbury is definitely in there, and there's just a huge swath of national forest that encompasses like Woodford and Shaftesbury and Somerset and Glastonbury, and there's a few other tiny towns in there that's also included. Some of Bennington, obviously, but it's all just totally uninhabited. Thousands and thousands and thousands of acres of forest, and a lot of people have walked in and not walked out again.
That's right. And you kind of mentioned that in another thing too, and you kind of did mention a little bit, I believe, within that Glastonbury Mountain in the Bennington Triangle and the mysterious I'm probably going to butcher the word here. Karen?
Oh, the cairns. Right. Yeah. So in that video, I'll just start from the beginning. You know, we explored the South Glastonbury ghost town, which is the less mysterious of the two ghost towns on Glastonbury Mountain. South Glastonbury was a logging community, and it was at the very end of the 1800s, like 1880s, 1890s. And there was so much timber up there. They set up a little community of course, the sawmill, but they also had a general store and a school and the housing lodging and the general store. And it was a place for families to live when the men were out cutting the logs down. And a lot of the women were assigned to work on the kilns. So they were making charcoal. So they were burning these logs down into charcoal and then shipping it out on a trolley line. And inevitably, they didn't really practice proper forestry. It came to a point where there just weren't enough trees to continue the operation. And so they went out of business. A couple of years went by, and the townspeople said, well, we have all these buildings way up in the mountains. There's a trolley track already there. Like, somebody had the brilliant idea of turning it into like a summer getaway for rich folks. And so for one season, they built this place up. They turned the general store into a casino. They turned the worker lodging into a giant hotel. And it was open 1 year, one summer, fall, and then there was a huge storm, and the little stream came up and destroyed all the trolley tracks, some of the buildings, and that was the end of it. They just let everything fall onto the ground. So that was the first place that we decided to explore in this video. Again, it's national forest. We would have loved to go up and see what kind of treasures we could find in the ground from the casino, right? But can't do that, so we just went up and explored and found the footprints of all of the buildings. And we found some glass shards from bottles of the people that were up there for a long time and things like that. But then after that, we head further up on the mountain, and at the very top, the Appalachian Trail crosses through. So we got on the Appalachian Trail for a little while, and we found these cairns, for lack of a better word. They're piles of stones, probably 6-10 feet wide, maybe 5 feet tall, and they're just entirely mysterious. Nobody knows who built them or how long ago they built them. I actually have like the Glastonbury book. It talks about the South Glastonbury ghost town and the cairns, and in that book they say that somebody decades ago kind of removed some of the stones and took some of the plant matter from inside and did some carbon dating on it, and it seems like they're pre-Native American. It was unconclusive. I don't know how true it is, but that's what the book said. So it's really, really interesting. These kind of two things, not really related, but both kind of cool and mysterious on the same mountain. And then on the other side, there's Fayetteville, which has a lot more of a grim story. Another ghost town on the other side.
Right. Which we can, if we have enough time, we'll definitely have to scratch that just a little bit. Sure. But if we start running out of time, then maybe I would love to have you back on so we can talk more in depth into that, probably.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, so for one, so does that mean maybe in the near future, if I'm ever down in Woodford and all that area again, maybe I can contact you and you can bring me for like a day trip then? Because I've never been up there to see this stuff.
Yeah, so the cairns, when Eddie and I went, we walked up to South Glastonbury, which was almost 2 hours of walking on what used to be the Appalachian Trail, but they moved it. So it's mostly like dilapidated trolley track. So it's not too bad of walking, but from South Glastonbury to the cairns, we just bushwhacked through wilderness, which I will never do again. I apologize. I'm not bringing you that way because I'm not going that way again. We're going to have to find a different way of getting there, which would probably be on the Appalachian Trail. So I'd have to map it out for you. But yeah, we could definitely go up and see those cairns again. I'm sure they're still there.
Oh, they gotta be. So But yeah, anyway, yeah, I just never been, but I've seen like your videos. I've seen people talk about it. There used to be, uh, let me rephrase this. There was an old book. It is hard to find now because it's out of print. I did actually find the author to the book, so I actually had him to discuss this book. It's called Haunted Hikes of Vermont. It was the first book in the series, but anyway, it's never found a new home to get republished, which sucks because it's awesome. And Glastonbury happened to be one of the quote haunted hike. And I remember talking with Tim, and he was talking about, which I think you guys were walking the same. I'm just gonna call it trail for lack of word, but the old like train tracks, or what used to be the old train tracks.
The old trolley lines that go up to South Glastonbury.
Correct. And one of the things that he was mentioning is because of it being the old train tracks and stuff and trolleys and stuff like that, people and him were saying like they almost felt like they could almost hear old train sound. So I'm just wondering like did you have anything weird like at all, like where you felt like you're hearing something that sounded like an old train or something, just because of I mean, for all I know, maybe it's just the way the woods are set up where, I don't know, like the wind could come in at just the right angle to make it sound like it's a train.
Sure. Yeah. The train or the trolley tracks follow the Glastonbury stream, and it's down in a very deep valley. It's pretty steep on both sides, so I'm sure that the wind can do some strange things down in the little valley, especially with all the trees around and stuff. We didn't personally experience anything potentially supernatural, but there's something kind of inherently creepy about anytime you're standing in a place where there used to be like a bustling community and then it just ended, not necessarily for any terrible reasons. They just left, but with all of the stuff still there, you can still see bricks on the ground. It's kind of a strange feeling. You don't run into that kind of place just in your day to day, like going to the supermarket or filling up a car full of gas and stuff. You don't really come across places where just people used to live and now they don't anymore. And, almost nobody visits this place. You'll get maybe a couple people a week just doing things like we do, right? Going on adventures and doing hiking and stuff. But it's a pretty isolated, desolate place, and it can kind of make you feel weird.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that was going to be like the next thing, was like, so when you and Eddie were, hiking up there, I think in that video you were basically saying like it was kind of quiet, and how there was I forget the exact wording that you used, but I want to say it was something to the lines of like there wasn't any foot traffic when you guys went up there. And so I guess what I'm trying to get at is like, so how quiet was the woods, I guess?
Sure. I think that what you're referring to is when we ended at South Glastonbury and then we just kind of bushwhacked through the wilderness to the cairns, right? It used to be the Vermont Long Trail, but they moved it many decades ago. So we were just kind of like pushing our way through saplings and trying to find our way using the GPS on our phones. But yeah, so that nobody had been there for a very long time, since the Long Trail went through there. And the woods, depending on what time of year it is and stuff, can be very, very quiet. I feel like that was the summertime when we went. This again, that video was, I don't know, 6-8 years ago. So I'm trying to. I haven't watched it in that long, so I'm trying to remember.
2017, yeah.
Okay. So I feel like it was the summertime. There were probably birds up in the trees and stuff, but there were no animals, right? And there was no indication of any habitation there. Like, there's no stone walls, there's no old roads, there's, it was just wilderness. And there's something inherently creepy about that too, kind of being in the middle of nowhere where people haven't been in a very, very long time.
Right. Well, the reason why I bring that up is because I've heard of an interesting quote, and it's always stuck to me. And I'm actually trying to pull it up right now because I don't even want to butcher it. But I have it on the description for the Bennington Glackenberry Mountains is what I should say. And basically, the quote goes. Um, when you walk into the forest or the mountain, you don't hear anything living. It's as though even the animals don't dare to like step foot into this quote triangle.
Mm. Well, I personally have been up that trail to South Glossenbury a dozen times outside of that video. Me and my buddy Eddie have fished that Glossenbury stream many, many times. Me and my father have, and people, deer hunting up in there. So there's definitely animals that live there, especially trout and deer. We ran across. It was really funny. I was sitting on the stream bed, quite a ways up, maybe halfway to South Glossenbury, and I was gutting my trout, about ready to leave, and a family of like 6 raccoon all came right up to the shore. I don't think they'd ever seen a human before, but they're all just kind of like at the water's edge, just like watching me, and I was, throwing them fish heads and stuff. It was a great experience. But no, there's definitely animals there. But like I said, if you're there and you're in the right mindset and you don't hear anything, you can definitely leave an impression on you. In fact, when I was in high school, my first Glossenbury experience, me and my buddies saw in the newspaper that Bigfoot was spotted on, I guess it was Route 7 north from like Bennington to Rutland. And it was in the newspaper, and we're like, what? Bigfoot on the edge of Glossenbury Mountain? We went down the rabbit hole of research, and we found probably a lot of the same books that you've read talking about Glossenbury and the Bigfoot and aliens and Native Americans that didn't want to live there because the winds met at a weird angle and all of these great stories. So we're like, we have to camp up at the top, as far up as we can drive on Glossenbury Mountain. So I don't know who it was, but there was about 10 of us, and somebody found a way to get up to the top, and we went through Fayetteville, and we all had these like junker high schooler cars, definitely not very high clearance underneath them. And we were going up all these old logging roads all the way up. And one of our buddies couldn't make it up. So I went back down to get them. And it was like classic horror movie. It was like just drizzling. It was pitch black out. There was no moon. And I'm like going down this super sketchy logging road. And I swear, out in the distance, around a corner, I see this giant, hairy, brown, glistening from the rain figure kind of disappear around the corner. And so like I stop, I'm panicking a little bit. And if that's where the story ended, 100% Bigfoot believer, just from that one experience in high school. But I built up some courage, and I put it back in drive, and I went back down around the corner, and there stood a full-grown bull moose. No, I had just seen its hindquarters, and it just kind of like very slowly disappeared into the woods, and I continued on down the mountain. And like I said, if that story had ended 1 minute earlier, I would have gone back to all my buddies and guys, not believe what I just saw. But that was also my first moose experience out in the wilderness. But yeah, no, there's definitely animals in Glossenbury. But like I said, if you're depending on what you're experiencing, it can definitely add to the experience, whether they're not there or not.
Oh, for sure. Well, I would also say depends on the foot traffic too, especially if the trail did move. So I'm trying to think here. If the trail moved, would that be considered where it is now, like where that parking lot is? I guess I'm just trying to.
Okay, so you seem like you're pretty local. You've where there's a parking lot, right?
Oh yeah, I bet that's where well, I'll bring it up real quick. You and I were messaging.
Yeah.
Obviously there's there's the Glastonbury parking lot where they have the sign that said Glastonbury Mountain. I think it says 10 miles, like hike or whatever. So you can kind of start the hike there.
You're talking about the parking lot on 7 in Woodford?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So that's the new leg of it.
That is the new leg of it.
Yeah. So if you, so you're coming out of kind of like Woodford Village, headed east, okay, towards the parking lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you cross the Roaring Branch. There's a bridge. You cross the branch for the second time on that road. There's a fork. There's an old church, and you take a left, and you head down this dirt road. You leave the highway and you head down this dirt road to the left. I believe they call it Hell Hollow. And you head up that dirt road, and at the very end there's a farm with horses, a bunch of white horses, and you continue on into the woods, and you continue on along the Glossenbury stream, and then there's a very tiny parking lot and a gate, and that's the old Appalachian Trail, the old Vermont Long Trail. And that continued up to, I don't remember the name of the Appalachian Trail lean-to or lodge or whatever, but it continued up straight up the mountain from there. But I think there was a parking issue, right? So then they moved it and they created that giant parking lot.
Yep. Well, I wouldn't even say giant, but it's enough to fit.
Well, it's a lot more than the other one.
Yeah, I bet. Okay, so Hell Hollow, that's interesting. So, okay, that makes a lot more sense now, because I know at the, I would now say the new parking lot to get up there then, for Hell Hollow, you just mentioned Hell Hollow. Hell Hollow actually had the story too, with the name of, oh man, I'm probably going to butcher the first name already. I never can quite figure out if it's Midi or like it's pronounced any other way. So I always say Midi Rivers. Midi Rivers. Yeah. Midi Rivers, for those that may not know, she would like or he, doesn't even say where I'm trying to look here. Yes, Mrs. Yeah,
just to butt in, it's Old Harbor Road. That
Old Harbor Road.
Hell Hollow. Yep, that's the old. Well, that's the way to get to South Glossenbury if you wanted to walk in.
Oh, yep. So it's not her. It is a him. So Midi Rivers, he was a 74-year-old local hunting guide. He led a party of 400 around the area of Hell Hollow in the southwest woods of Glastonbury before he became suddenly lost. And then after an unsuccessful initial search, many still believed that this knowledgeable woodman would be able to survive and soon surface in town. However, this was not the case. Soon more than 300 concerned locals and the U.S. Army soldiers had to be dispatched from Massachusetts, Fort Devens, comb through the vast wilderness for 8 years, turning up with not even a single shred of evidence as to the whereabouts of Rivers, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, and we don't have a lot of large predators. Like, he wasn't like eaten by a mountain lion, or we don't have mountain lions around here. Like, we have black bears. Probably not attacked by a black bear, right? More than likely. Even things like falling down wells, it's another one of those things that like could definitely happen in this part of the New England, but there's no habitation up in that. Like, there's no wells up there. There was nobody that lived up there. So it's really mysterious, where he ended up.
Right.
All those people.
Yeah, and the one that I don't really say love, but because you just had to bring up Bear Man, I'm gonna have to share this one now. So anyway, I think this is probably the best newspaper article ever. Like, when it comes to the headline, and it's because of Well, I'll read it. And I actually, for those listening, if you guys are curious about some of the stuff that Brad and I will probably just be discussing a little bit of, like some of the weird disappearances that have gone on around Glastonbury, is here's another one for you. It's Carl Herrick. Herrick. Um, it was November 24th, 1943. Carl was about 37 years old, about my age. And anyway, in November of 1943, Carl, 37 years old, was enjoying a hunting trip with his cousin, Henry, 10 miles northeast of Glastonbury town. The two became separated, and Carl never returned. Henry found Carl's body 3 days later in a bizarre scene. Carl's ribs had punctured his lungs, and the post-mortem indicated that something had squeezed him to death. Henry reported that there were large bear prints around the corpse. However, experts say a bear would not have squeezed a man to death. So anyway, the newspaper article, which again, for people that want to see more about missing people that I have a page dedicated on myhauntedvermont.org. It's called The Missing, but I have a little clip of this newspaper article, and the title of it is literally called "Missing Vermont Hunter Found in Woods, Squeezed to Death by a Bear Hug."
Bear hug, like it.
Yep. So I've never let that one down, but because you had to bring up bear, I just had to.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I have no idea. That's the first time I've heard that particular story. But I can only speak on my experiences and doing what I do on a daily basis up in the mountains. I've definitely come across bear dozens of times, and every time they've just run away the opposite direction. But you never know. Maybe none of the ones that I saw wanted to give me a hug. So,
well, that's good, man. I mean, let's keep it that way. I hope that way you won't be the next one.
Right.
But no. So before we begin, Brad, I just want to throw this out here too before we kind of go into maybe a little bit if you still have time. But on your thoughts and opinions about the whole like supernatural, paranormal, cryptozoology, like we can just say the paranormal universe and as a whole, right?
Sure.
Especially where you are, there's a lot of weird stories that come around Bennington County, like excuse me. There's another one where I forget what year it was, but have you ever heard about the one where it was a lady driving down somewhere around Bennington County, maybe or Bennington, Manchester area, or whatever. Anyway, it was like a dog man came out of the woods or something and started chasing her car at like 75 miles an hour.
I haven't heard 75 miles an hour. No, I haven't heard that one.
Oh man. Yeah. I can't remember all the details of it, but I just remember that this lady was driving home one night, happened to see this strange looking animal that looked like a wolf, but it could stand upright on two legs. Started chasing after her in the car, and she was doing like probably 80, 90 miles an hour, but this thing was able to still keep up with her. And anyway, so I guess what I want to know is, what is your thought, like, because you're around that creepy area anyway,
sure,
and stuff. But as you yourself, what do you think of this whole supernatural idea of other realms and stuff?
Yeah. So I think we could break it down into categories. Do I think there are any large cryptids that could potentially find their bodies or take photos of or come across on my adventures? I would say probably not, unless they have some ability to hide themselves more than a normal creature. I have, in my own experiences, I've heard sounds and captured sounds on camera that I've yet to be able to discover the source of what kind of animal they may have been. I have definitely at least 2 times seen silhouettes of what I'm assuming were people kind of off in the distance in a place they probably shouldn't have been. You know, when I'm detecting on these private plots, landowners will say, there shouldn't be anybody else there. It's not hunting season, you know, but you know, those could be explained away by just people hiking through and not knowing where they are and stuff. But I would say anything's possible. I haven't personally experienced any kind of animal-like cryptids in my time in the woods. And like I said, the last decade or so, I've been in the woods all day, maybe 3 times a week. And I, you know, in these types of places where nobody's been in a very long time, that seems like a perfect place for them to hide. When it comes to kind of like the spirit side of it, I sure hope not, because I've brought home a lot of stuff in my house connected to dead people. And I haven't experienced anything like that in my home yet. I don't know if things can connect to objects like that, but my house would be the perfect place for them to hang out, because literally hundreds of objects related to people that are no longer with us that I personally dug out of the ground. But when you're in a place like that, there's definitely a feeling of like, you know, there absolutely, like, especially with like little family cemeteries that you can stumble across of 2-3 little headstones in the middle of nowhere. Maybe I'm the first one seeing them in 100 years. And there's, you know, unfortunately always very small children. And, you know, it's a very solemn feeling seeing these things. And when you're sitting there and you're digging something up out of the ground, you can kind of have a feeling, you know, connected to these things that you're finding. For the most part, I'm very much a skeptic with that kind of stuff, but there's always, you know, when you're there and you're holding this stuff in your hand, you know, there's always a feeling that kind of connects you to those people who belonged before you that are no longer with us.
That's pretty much well said, man. So that's funny that you say that. I want so basically, I guess. So, of all the stuff that you've had, you've never had anything like mysteriously just like what to say for the example here, because I know some people say there's like pranksters, right, or jokesters when it comes to spirit, where like you can set your car key down when you know you set them down like right on the counter, but then you like turn away for a couple minutes and then you turn back and they're gone, and then they're somehow magically appeared at a place where you know they weren't there, but here they are now.
Have I ever had anything like that happen? I don't think so. I've definitely, you know, been in the field at some of these old places and had like my batteries die in my camera for no good reason, and I'll have to switch them out. Equipment fail. You know, maybe they didn't want me there, or maybe I brought dead batteries. You know, it's hard to say.
I know it's draining your batteries for themselves to manifest in a way, but you just weren't catching on or something. Who knows, man? Not to cut in.
No, there's definitely a very large, well, I won't say very large. There's definitely a sizable portion of my audience that watches my videos, maybe not even necessarily for what I'm doing or what I'm saying, but they're just watching the background, and they'll comment in the comment section, 10 minutes and 33 seconds. There's, I forget what they have names for all of these different kinds of, cryptids that, there's one on that tree, at 10 minutes and 33 seconds, or maybe I've never spotted them with my eyes, but people are seeing them in my videos, I guess. Because I am always in these places that are used to be inhabited, no longer are, in the middle of nowhere. And maybe the first one to be there in 50 years, 100 years,
Right. Yeah.
That would be the spot.
That would be the spot, especially now that you just walked into their neighborhood, per se. They're like, oh, what's going on here,
Right.
Maybe that could be an idea of why your batteries are all of a sudden dying, because they're, they want to say hello to you, but you just can't You're just not seeing the signs or hearing it, you know?
Right.
Anyway, so to go on a little bit, like I said, I want to talk maybe a little bit more if you have some time there, Brad. But you guys did Grave of Gold, which was released last year at around February 10th, 2024. So if you can, just talk to us about that.
Sure. So I'm gonna talk about that by going back like 2 or 3 years before that, where Eddie and I made a different mini series. So Eddie came to me with this idea of wanting to find this like legendary vault, this legendary cave full of Spanish gold. That's a pretty prevalent myth in Vermont.
Mm.
And I said, Eddie, that's crazy. There's no such thing. And then I Googled it, and it seems like, at least in the places where this vault seemed to, in history exist, there's a pretty strong legend of the townspeople that they all know about it. So I said, okay, so we're going to make this mini series about trying to find this legendary vault of gold up in the mountains. Spanish explorers.
Are you talking about the Bristol treasure?
I am, yeah. So we made a mini series. Hell's Half Acre, yeah. Yeah, so it takes place there. The story also takes place in Wallingford, Vermont, in Chaos Canyon. It also takes place way up near Camel's Hump. It has many facets to it. And so we did this entire mini series, 8 episodes, trying to find this lost treasure. And the way we ended it, spoiler alert for you and all of your listeners, I knew we weren't going to find it. I knew we weren't going to find it. So from the very beginning, I was like, all right, well, let's make this show following in the footsteps of all of these famous people that looked for it before us. So there's somebody that hired dowsing rod people to look for it. So we learned how to use dowsing rods to look for it. Somebody hired a psychic to look for it. So we hired a psychic to help us find it. We did all of these things in all these episodes. But my goal was to debunk the myth, find out where the myth came from. And we did that. And by the end, we actually hid our own treasure. So we kind of stole this story from the Vermont people, their legend, and we put back a new one of an actual treasure for our audience to go look for. And we hid the clues how to find it in each of the 8 episodes. So somebody found it in like 3 days, by the way. So it was a treasure chest full of silver bars. Somebody found it. Flew out from Kansas City. So that was series number 1. So series number 2 was Grave of Gold. And we're like, we want to do another one of these series because it was so much fun looking for a legendary Vermont treasure. But we don't want to do the same thing. We don't want to hide a treasure at the end. Everybody's going to be expecting that. We want to do something different. So when we were doing DeGrau, and we hired the psychic to help us find, and there's like all of these great stories about it being protected by hellhounds, being protected by a boy with like a ghost boy with a hot iron, all of these great stories. Wouldn't it be great if we would like come across stuff like that and actually film it or interact with it and all this stuff? What if the dowsing rods actually pointed us to some amazing treasure? So for this next series, I had the harebrained idea of being like, Eddie, let's just do it totally fiction. And then we can make all of that stuff actually happen in the show. And we'll play it first episode just like we did DeGrau. It'll be a real thing. We're looking for this treasure. But at the end, kind of spin the cameras around and reveal that this is going to be a fictional show. And then we can do whatever we want. And that's what we did. And so with that idea, playing actors, and writing a show for the first time, and doing the cinematic filming for the first time, and doing all of this stuff just as like 2 dudes making videos on YouTube, doing our best. We decided to kind of include the Bennington Triangle in this pretty real treasure story that we came across of this man named Oliver Perry in the late 1700s. He was accused of murdering his patrons of his stagecoach stop and burying all of the wealth that he was accumulating in his one day to be grave. It just so happens to be in the Bennington Triangle. We're like, wouldn't it be great if like the people, wouldn't it be great if he was innocent and the people that were disappearing were actually disappearing into the triangle, and we used a villain, Henry McDowell, who was associated with Fayetteville. He murdered somebody in Fayetteville and Glastonbury. He was like this kind of time traveling or dimension traveling villain that ended up at Perry's Tavern. So we did this 5-episode fictional miniseries based on true events, like you said, about a year ago, and it was a blast to make and write and film and act in.
Yes. I enjoyed it. I mean, I loved the real stuff. I love the fictional stuff. I love how you oh man, what do they call it? The stack stones. I know
the Cairns. Yeah.
Those are the
we
Cairns?
had to include the Cairns. Yeah.
Okay, because for some reason I'm thinking like that's not the right, the right way of saying.
I think technically a cairn is any pile of stones,
okay,
for a purpose. Yeah.
Well, then I'll have to reprogram my brain to just start saying that then. But to me, it sounds like I don't know. It doesn't sound right. But anyway, I loved how you kind of used that to basically signify like once you cross that border, that's where you bye-bye basically. But
potentially. And we had Eddie wear red in the episode where he may or may not have disappeared, which was a very important part of the legend of disappearing into the Bennington Triangle, was wearing the red.
That's right. Which is why I was wearing red in the short horror film that we made for Terror Trail.
I noticed that.
Yeah. And so yeah, there's a little snippet that I wanted to we did to even promote this. So Brad, here's another story. I don't know if you saw it, but there's a video that me and my buddy did, Jeremy, who was also active with me. We basically made it so like I had like another red shirt, and I was just like, I forget exactly what I said, but I said blah 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 blah, like you wear it. And as I tossed it, I told my friend when he went to go like to record it, to have somebody just toss him the shirt like I'm tossing him the shirt so he can put it on. It was just stupid but fun at the same time. Basically it was just like, oh, you ain't gonna wear this, and he's like, oh, I'm brave enough to wear red going into the woods.
Did he disappear?
Oh yeah, totally.
Oh, rest in peace.
Oh man.
Maybe he wound up at Oliver Perry's Tavern.
Or maybe you rounded up in California like that one dude did. If you ever heard about that story, he was hiking, and then I think me and Paul Bartholomew were actually just talking about this when I had him on. If we remember right, he was hiking somewhere in New Hampshire, and like 5 days later, he ended up winding up in California.
Wow, that's quite the journey.
It was weird, that's for sure. But I'll never forget when I heard about that. But no, when it comes to like historical, real stuff, that's what I kind of wanted to do with Terror Trail, which is like, spoiler alert for those that may not have seen Terror Trail by now, we wanted to have fun with the cryptid, the man-eating stone. But I mean, because we were indie, we weren't really like having a great big devouring rock or boulder or whatever that they portrayed. Right. But we did what we could. We wanted to have fun with it. But I mean, because we were just like, you know what? There's Bigfoot. There's all these like other type of indie films that have dogmen in them and stuff. It's like, let's just have a man-eating stone. Screw it. Because that's never.
That was the inspiration for our cairns, was the man-eating stone. The idea that there's this stone that when you step on it or touch it or whatever, or walk past it, then you are never seen it from again, And that was the whole point of those. We didn't spell out a lot of this stuff in the show, but as you discovered, we had this other character named the Seeker of Truth, who has his own YouTube video. And every time we posted an episode, he posted a video on his own channel that kind of filled in a lot of those plot holes, a lot of that extra information alongside our episode.
Oh, darn.
So he actually explains, like, the same episode where we see the first cairn in our show, he then talks about the man-eating stone and how maybe they could be, markers for, boundary around a place where you shouldn't be and things like that. But we try to incorporate every single Bennington Triangle Glossenbury legend that we possibly could into the show.
Very nice. Yeah, so we ended up making Terror Trail 2, and that was where me and my buddy from the end of the first Terror Trail kind of took over, and we kind of made it found footage. And gotcha. But in that one, we made it as a Wendigo.
Sure.
So we had fun with that one too. But I wish one death scene was a little bit better, but at the time it was just like, well, this is what we can do thanks to COVID. So yeah, that was fun. Because at the time of COVID, we postponed it for almost 2 years. Almost. Yeah. But by the 2022, I was just like, no, we need to get this done. We just need to just get it done, basically. I was like, we have everything. It's not going to take long. It'll take a day to shoot all this. We're just plan a day where we can all get together, run around in the woods, have fun, scream, holler, get bloody, and just, do it. But
it's funny. We did the same thing with when we were doing the first series, the Vault of DeGrau series, where we didn't have it really, aside from hiding a treasure, we didn't have an end game in plan at all. And so we made it to like episode 4 or 5, and then COVID hit, and then it was like a year and a half before we were able to like even have the motivation to continue working on it again, And so for the Grave of Gold, we were like, I wrote everything out first. Like it was complete on paper, shot list. Like, again, we're not filmmakers. I have no idea what I'm doing. I just have a camera and a microphone, and we just went for it. But to the best of my ability, I wrote everything out ahead of time, and it still took us almost 2 years of just trying to find time. The two of us have a day together to go out and try to create this crazy thing. It takes a long time, no matter really what you're making.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I remember the first film that we did called The Passenger, which, by the way, like, spoiler alert for people too that may not know, but every time we do that, I plan on doing like a short film. I'll try to. Sometimes, like, the next one that I'd love to do is definitely can't happen on the actual road, but we could sort of make it happen on the road, but not really. Anyway, I wanted to make it so that wherever the legend or story that we were doing, that's where we're gonna film. So with The Passenger, that legend takes place at Marble Street in West Rutland. We physically went to that road, and that's how we made the short film. It's right on the road where where the legend is. Because number one, Whipple Hollow Road is another one of those abandoned towns where they supposedly got up and left because something happened. Like in this case, Whipple Hollow was known for the marble industry, but once the marble ran out, they packed up and left.
Sure.
And so basically, this road connected to that Whipple Hollow. But not only that, there's a legend about the West Rutland Marsh Boardwalk, where supposedly they can hear ghostly voices on the top of the swamp water, like almost like it echoes. So we literally took all those. We try to take all 3 of those and put it into one short film.
Nice.
And then as for like Terror Trail, with the first one, we literally went to that parking lot what you and I were discussing.
Oh yeah.
And we filmed our friend just go to the Stein and just look at it, and then off he goes, and it's like, oh, yeah. But because of that being so packed and stuff, because it was just gonna be terrible anyway. But I wanted to actually get him walking some of that trail a little bit, because that new trail is so weird, man. Like, I love it and then I hate it at the same time. It's like God, like this is so weird. Like, it's almost like there's stone stairs. There's like this weird,
it's really nice.
Yeah, like there's like this weird tree that is like right there on the trail. Then like if you keep going, it's like maybe I want to call it like a boulder that is split in half that you can walk right through.
You walk through, yeah.
Dude, like, it's amazing. I wanted that footage, but we couldn't get it. So we went to the opposite side of that parking lot, which had a trail, which I didn't even know about. But so we had him walk that for like the point of view of him.
That's a steep trail.
Yeah. So anyway, we had him walk up there for like a little bit. We didn't have him like completely go up there, but another fun fact is our daughter in the first film, who basically just vanishes from the car, that was supposed to be a nod to the real life case of Paul Jepson that disappeared in his mother's car.
Right. Yep, that's another one that I am familiar with. Sure.
Yeah. So again, like some of the real stuff I wanted to include as much as, like, I wanted to include as much as I could within this, so that way people could be like, oh, what? And then even in the video description of the short films that we did, I kind of posted like the cases, so people wanted to look it up, they could.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's what we did. But anyway, so Brad, I guess, like, what I guess when you were making Grave of Gold, or that other one, I'm sorry, the Vault of
DeGrau.
Besides COVID, obviously. What would you say would well, you probably already said it, so I guess elaborate more if you have to. But what were some of the challenges of creating, Grave of Gold the other one?
I mean, the greatest challenge was just trying to create a product that was not necessarily something I was even capable of creating. We just had 2 cameras, two of these. These are just like consumer DSLRs, and that's basically all we had, and tripods, and there was just 2 of us, so we didn't have a cameraman or anything. We were just trying our absolute best to make it look like cinema, which we failed to do in a lot of different ways, but in a lot of ways I am pretty happy with what we were able to achieve. Just got 2 guys with no experience or education in doing this. But for me personally, like, I wrote like all the dialogue, and I kind of wrote out the story, and it was very challenging, but it was so much fun being, having a creative outlet to do that kind of thing, trying to connect, like, how this character is going to interact with this character, or like, spoiler, my buddy Eddie, who's like my co-star in this show, he disappears into the triangle, and so there's like a bunch of dialogue that like needs to be conveyed, but like, who am I going to talk to? So like, I had to contrive some way of having dialogue to nobody, or how do you do this? I don't know. So I had to like go down the rabbit hole, watch all the YouTube videos of how to write dialogue, how to film dialogue, all the different angles and everything. That was by far the most challenging part. And trying to convince all of our friends to be actors, which is a hard ask, to talk to somebody who has no experience in acting, no desire to do any acting, and be like, hey, yeah, so I'm making this thing. Would you mind like just reading some lines, maybe just memorizing them ahead of time, and just like pretend being somebody else for a little while? And all of my friends were very, very kind, and did the best they could, did as good as we did. But it was just so much fun to kind of go down the rabbit hole of the Bennington Triangle and take all of these stories, which, have existed long before us, and kind of put them all into one thing. And a lot of the pieces fell into place easier than I expected. Like, we knew we wanted like this big twist we knew from the very beginning we're going to be looking for this treasure by a murderous tavern owner. Like, one of us needs to be somehow sit at a table with this murderous tavern owner from 250 years ago and have there be some danger that we're going to be his next victim. Like, how do we get there? Right. That was the beginning of the series. And that's when the Bennington Triangle kind of got involved. And then we knew we wanted there to be a twist where, okay, he wasn't actually the killer. There was somebody else there that was doing all of the killing. And like, what a crazy coincidence that in this newspaper article, this tavern owner had a guy on the property who was like a transient, whose name was Hod, Hod, which was definitely a fake name. And then we have 100 years later in Fayetteville, this Henry H. McDowell D, who actually killed somebody. Like, it's perfect that this guy disappeared, this killer. He'd never seen him. He like escaped transport to an insane asylum, and like he was never seen from again. Obviously, he walked into the Bennington Triangle, right? And then wound up 100 years prior at Oliver Perry's Tavern. So it like little things like that, just like the names being so similar, it just worked perfect. All the pieces fit into place. Why couldn't it be true, right? Never know.
That's exactly. That's the lovely thing about imagination, man. I love it.
Right.
And
I had mentioned to you before, like my audience that I had built up over a decade is used to the weekly norm from me, which is going out to one of these crazy historic places, finding a bunch of stuff, me reciting all the historical facts about them. Everything is 100% true, right? And then, so we didn't let our audience know ahead of time that this was going to be a fictional show, and it was not well received. And to my disbelief, despite the time travel and like the ghosts and all of the crazy stuff in the show, a lot of people didn't realize it was not actually fiction. They thought it was real for like a good portion of the show. When Eddie disappeared, like we received panicked emails, be like, "Oh, I hope is Eddie okay? I hope Eddie's." It's like, I mean, there's been a lot of very unbelievable things in the show so far. Like, I don't know. That was a challenge.
So yeah, well, honestly, I almost felt like, and I didn't say this to you through Messenger, but like I thought about it for a little bit because, like I was telling you, like I started watching it last night, but then my goddamn cat was in the screen, so I had to stop. Right. So anyway, I literally at one point was just like, "Oh my god, this feels like freaking Blair Witch in a way," and I'm like, it's weird, but I like it. And then like I was telling you today when I was at work, I was finishing it because. Whatever. I mean, I had to turn away to look away, but I still had you in my ear with my Bluetooth and stuff.
Right.
But, like if something specifically was going on, I would try to watch as long as I can before I had to turn her away. But anyway, I guess what I'm trying to get at is like I was telling you with the stacking rocks. I love that with like some of the cliches of like the weird like breaking out of the camera like you would see in Blair Witch and the shaking and this and that.
Right.
Like dude, that's what I love about in a way found footage because normally that's what you would see, right?
Right.
But I have seen some of your videos before and I do feel like you kind of did keep it as your norm in a way. It was almost like, yes, you two were fighting, which obviously you planted that there. No, I didn't. You trying to tell me I did this? Blah blah blah.
Right.
I mean, as much as but when you start really thinking about it, it's like, well, you're going after a treasure. You're known for something that like supposed to be worth like whatever amount in today's money, let's just say, for the sake of this. So, I mean, why not try to get angry with each other? Because then all of a sudden, if you do find the treasure, it's like, maybe you could just turn on each other. Or maybe that could have been another cliche ending. Maybe you found the treasure, but then you two fell out over it. Who won, though? I don't know.
Well, that was, there was many iterations of the script before we landed on the final one. And there was a version where we do find it and, Eddie and we have like a physical altercation with each other over it. But we ended up writing that out. But we did try to, whether we succeeded or not, we did try to set up like individual motivations for the two of us, where I'm like the content creator and my viewership is falling off and I need like a hit, right? And so I'm going to do anything I have to make the series go viral, right? And then now Eddie, he's had some hardships, and I tell him that, whatever we find, you can have it. And so he's kind of got like the monetary motivation and stuff. So of course, when I find a bag of coins, he's going to accuse me of planting it for the content, right? And I say, oh no, you can have it, you can have it. But so we had these kind of two kind of differing motivations. And then we did try to end the show with like a little, there's a little spin-off possibly, right? So Eddie doesn't wind up with anything at the end because there's no treasure to find, but the tavern owner gives him a clue to the next possible treasure, which it was hard to decipher. I realize this now. A lot of people are saying they couldn't read the paper at the end, but it was supposed to be it was for the St. Albans raid, which I don't know if you've heard of, but there was like during the Civil War, a bunch of banks were robbed up in the St. Albans, and they never recovered the money. It's out there somewhere.
Well, good luck to you on that then. So real quick, Brad, I mean, I don't want to take up any more time, but you've been kind enough to deal with me for this long. But yeah, for those, I know you kind of said it at the beginning, but let's remind people, like, this isn't your norm anyway, right? So let's just remind people exactly like what you do. So you're basically Green Mountain metal detecting, and basically just paranormal stuff is not your norm. So anyway, take it away.
Not at all. Yeah, no. So like I said at the beginning, I film videos one a week every Friday of going up into these forgotten places with my metal detector and finding the cool stuff in the ground and talking about it. It's something that I fell in love with, like I said, about a decade ago. And every time I go, I find something new and interesting. And these two mini series are very much not the norm. There's been two of them in the last like 5 or 6 years. They just little passion projects that both involve history. Both of them, in a lot of ways, they have a lot of his actual, real historical content to them. But this last one, we were just trying to do something different, to do it fictional, and we are working on a third mini series that is not the St. Albans raid. It's a different treasure, and there's going to be a totally different angle to this one. It's not going to be fiction again. We learned our lesson there. It's going to be something different, but again, very historical and real and nonfiction. But yeah, every Friday, a new video. I'm on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of the major platforms. And every once in a while, I'll go to kind of an unusual place. Like my norm is definitely up in the mountains at these old cellar holes around New England stone walls and stuff. But the last week and this week, I was in Cape Cod, finding some really nice stuff. Occasionally, I'll travel way down south. Went to Europe a couple of years ago. It's just mostly metal detecting, but I'll do gold panning and rock hounding and bottle digging and all kinds of treasure hunting oriented stuff. When people ask me what I do for a living, I say treasure hunter, just to get a reaction out of them. But that's in essence what I do.
I love it, man. I love that we finding some old history and stuff like that. And yes, that overseas one, was it that digging up the bottles or something like that? I think that I was reading that one. Was that it? No.
I didn't dig any bottles overseas, but
No. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong playlist. You just said an adventure in Europe, basically. So I don't know.
Oh yeah. No, I went to France.
Getting confused. Yeah, that was my dumbass, I guess.
Which is another crazy story, but save it for another day.
For sure, man. I would love to have you back on for maybe something else. Maybe like if you and I can collaborate on something. There's a few locations that I actually have always been curious about. If there is anything, it's just a matter of finding the right people and maybe with somebody like you that do finding the right people that do know maybe how to contact the people, especially someone like you that goes off and tries to find treasure. Because obviously, when it comes to metal detection and digging, I think you kind of said it in Grave of Gold, where you kind of need like a permit. But anyway, that could be saved for another time too. But anyway,
sure. That's for national forest and state forest.
National forest, yeah, okay. And anyway, there's 2 locations that are on my bucket list that are considered old towns, old whatever, that are no longer there, but they're supposedly foundations. Sure. One is up in Chittenden, and then another one is what they call Old West Castleton. I've always been interested in those 2 places to look more into. But if you don't mind, maybe we can talk more about that maybe afterward. But yeah, anyway,
absolutely.
So Brad, again, thank you for your time. Like I said, I don't want to take any more, but maybe to end it on a positive note, which would be, so what is your website again, for people where they can find all your cool stuff?
Yeah, sure. So if you go to GMMD.us, not .com, but .us, you can find all of my social media sites there. YouTube is my kind of primary one, and from there you can find all the rest also. But if you you could just type in Vermont metal detecting, and I'll come up. You'll find me,
man. Yeah, how could you not find this guy? Anyway, man, Brad, again, thank you so much for your time, and for everybody else, man, this is a new one for me. So I guess keep your eyes open, because you just never know if you're gonna just stumble upon some mysterious, weird, serial killing, time traveling person, because you just never know, what is gonna be out in those woods.